And I want to remind you, please keep your phones off and stay seated during our speaker. Now, please help me. Big round of applause. Welcome our speaker, Mark.
Isn't it good it's raining, huh? I was born here. My name is Mark, and I'm an alcoholic. And I'm also a drug addict. And I'll come back to the part about born here in a minute or two. I don't normally identify as an alcoholic and an addict. A couple of reasons. One, long time ago when I first got here, I always did that. And then I think I came to realize that I did that because I wanted to be different, maybe. But if any of you here tonight, and I don't think there are, but if any of you people or any of you folks get offended by someone who mentions drugs at an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, then you need to talk to Mike Bennett about that, because he's the guy that asked me to speak, and he knows that I'm going to talk about that. And if I were to limit my talk and keep the drugs out of it, I'm not really telling you my story. I got sober in April 29th, 1986. If you name the drug, I've probably done it, unless they came up with it after 1986, then there's a good chance I haven't done it. Not intentionally, anyway. Funny thing I was thinking about it's starting to rain now. And used to, we'd be talking just like everybody's been for, this summer, and God for the last couple of summers, is, God, I wish it would rain. I wish it'd rain. And then it starts raining, and it starts raining every day, and then you start hearing people say, Jesus, is this rain ever going to stop, But I was born and raised here. I have never met an alcoholic or a drug addict, and I don't really want to keep differentiating between the two. Alcohol is one of the worst drugs I've ever done. I mean, it hurt me the most. But I've never met an alcoholic who doesn't have a low sense of self-esteem. And I'm certainly one of those guys. Now, I got to share, about a year and a half ago at the VA. And I talked about something there that night, and my wife mentioned to me after I had spoken that she was surprised that I brought up a subject of little Mark, okay? And that was the first time I'd ever talked about that, was at that meeting. And my oldest brother got killed in a car wreck when I was 7 years old. He'd been drinking. We grew up in the Baptist church here in town, and I was taught that drinking alcohol, along with all kinds of other things, would send me to hell, unless I were to repent and be saved and dunked in something like this thing right back here. And my mother, and God bless my mother was a saint, but I cannot even imagine, and some of you I'm sure have experienced this, but I can't even imagine the pain of losing a child. And what I think my mother did, well, I know she did, as I was growing up, she just, she was like a mother hen with me. And, she wasn't going to lose another boy. And I can remember things like I wanted to play football. Well, little Mark can't play football. And that thing stuck with me. And And then I found booze. And booze turned little Mark into, I was a big shot. That's what it did for me. I never tasted a drink of alcohol that I liked the taste of it, okay? I hear people talk about pizza and beer, and, excuse me. For me, I'd much rather have pizza and a glass of iced tea or pizza and a Coca-Cola. I drank alcohol for the effect. And what I would do is I would down the first 2 or 3 so I couldn't taste it. And then I drank for the effect. You hear people talk about normal people. God, I wish I could just drink like a normal person. Well, what's a normal person drink? 2 drinks, 3 drinks? I don't know. But 2 drinks or 3 drinks would not take me where I want to go. I have no desire, I don't want to hit off of a joint. I don't want a couple of lines of cocaine. I drink and I use for the effect. And when I first started drinking, it really worked. It made me good enough. If I walked into a bar and I hadn't been drinking yet. I started to use the word sober. I wasn't sober. But if I walked into a bar and I hadn't been drinking yet, I can't talk to the girls. I can't shoot pool. I can't dance. Give me some drinks. And I can do every bit of that stuff, and I can do it with the best of them. And I also, another thing I liked to do while I was drinking was I like to drink and drive fast. And, when I got sober, they didn't frown on DUIs quite like they do today. I've had experiences like driving up South Montezuma at 70 miles an hour in a Pinto, and I got pulled over into the Shepherd Brothers gas station. It is different than it is nowadays, but I got pulled over in there, and I got out and I knew the cop. And he asked me, he goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Man, I'm just drunker than shit." And he said, "Can you make it home?" And I said, "I think so." And then he told me to get there. Had another cop. He lived right next door. And I pulled up and parked in the driveway and got out of the car. And there's a cop car. It's got me blocked in the driveway. And he says, "This car moves again tonight. You're going to jail." And I wasn't always that lucky. A few years later, I'm living in Tempe. Met a girl at a nightclub, and she worked there, and she agreed to go. I don't know where we were going to go, but we were going to go somewhere. She agreed for me to come back and pick her up, okay? And I had a buddy with me, so I took him home and came back to get this girl. And right as I pulled into the parking lot of this bar, there's the red lights, behind me. And also at this time, I'm involved in a business of buying wholesale and selling retail. And little Mark is carrying a snub-nosed .38 in a spring-loaded holster because it made me good enough, man. And it made me not little Mark. And God only knows. What would have ever happened to me if I'd had to pull that thing on somebody? They'd probably take it away from me and just beat the shit out of me with it. I don't know. But, and I also had about $2,800 in cash in my pocket. And so the first thing I did when I got pulled over is I took the gun out and laid it on the passenger seat. And, the cop made me, do all the stuff they make you do and try and walk a straight line. And then he was arresting me, and he had me up against the car, and he's frisking me, and he finds the holster, and he goes, "Where's the gun?" I said, "It's on the passenger seat," and that was legal for it to be on the passenger seat. But I had this fear, because I was driving a sports car, and carrying a gun, pocket full of money, and that somehow this cop's going to know I'm a drug dealer. And so this girl I'm going to pick up is here. She shows up, and she's standing there, and while the cop goes over to the car to get the gun, I handed that girl my wad of money. And then I kept, being real. I kept pushing the cop to get me her phone number. And he got it for me, okay? And then they took me down. Now, I've been arrested for DUI 3 times. God, I sold I don't know how much pot, transported it back east. Hundreds and hundreds of pounds. I've never seen the inside of a jail cell, never. That night, that cop let me call somebody to come and get me, and that guy took me to get my car, where they left my car, and I'm still drunk, but I got my car and we drove it home. And I started calling that girl that had all my money. And I lived in Tempe. She lived way out in Mesa, East Mesa. And so I drove out there. And I don't know what time it was, 4 o'clock in the morning, maybe time I got to her house. And she handed me this wad of money, and I put it in my pocket, and I went home, and I passed out, and I got up about 3 or 4 the next day. And, I think I had maybe $2,800, and I counted my money, and I had about 400. And so I went back to that bar that night to talk to that girl, and she had quit earlier that day. That was my first DUI. My second DUI, there used to be a bar here in town, Michael remember, it was called Funky's, down close to the liquor barn. They tore it down and built a big office building there or something. But I was shooting pool in Funky's all day, and we were going out and back smoking opium and drinking beer. And I was in my ex-wife's car, and it came time to go pick her up. And I'm going up Montezuma again, same goddamn place, going around the curve by Shepherd Brothers gas station. And there's an RV in front of me, and I go around him to pass him, and because I'm a busy guy, I don't have time for to drive behind people. And then here, came a car, and I slammed into him and totaled my wife's car. I remember I spun around and slid down the road, and I'm just drunkard than shit, man. And I have an ounce of pot. And now, one thing, they went easier on DUIs back then, but they didn't go as easy on pot as they do nowadays. And I'm sitting there thinking, what the hell am I going to do? So I take the pot, stick it down in my pants, get out of the car, walk over to Shepherd Brothers, get a can of Squirt, a pack of gum, and a pack of Certs. And I throw 3 or 4 of those Certs in my mouth, and I start chewing the gum, and walk back out to the wreck. And the old man's got the light, that hit me, or I hit, or I don't even know what happened. But he had the license plate walking around going, hit and run, hit and run. And then he goes, there he is. And I think a cop on duty happened to be there, but whatever happened, they got me, and they handcuffed me behind my back and put me in the back seat of that cop car. Now, nowadays, the seats of cop cars, I believe, are all molded, okay? But the one they put me in was just like a regular back seat. And this is the gospel truth, and I'd hate to try and duplicate this today. But handcuffed back here, I got that lid of pot out of my pants and put it in my mouth, and I started chewing on it. And I've been smoking opium, and man, my mouth is, if I try and swallow that, I know I'm going to choke to death. And so I spit it out, caught it, and stuffed it behind that seat. Now, that's the truth. I did that. they took me to the police station. Somebody came and got me. I got to leave. My ex-wife wasn't real pleased about her car. But that's a joke. You're supposed to laugh. Anyway, 10 days later, I'm driving down East Gurley. I get pulled over. Oh, and I blew a 3-2 that night. I'm driving down East Gurley, and I get pulled over again. And the first time, he gave me 4 tickets. I got DUI, driving left of center, failure to control, and speeding, I guess. 10 days later, they pull me over again, write me up this time, DUI and speeding, and I blow a 2.9. Now, I haven't been to court on the first one yet. And I got enough sense to know that I'm probably screwed, But I'm also a pretty good manipulator. And it was a little town, and I cut and sold firewood. And I sold it to the judge, so I knew the judge. And I went to see the judge ahead of time. And I said, I'm coming to see you with 6 tickets, and 2 of them are DUIs. I said, maybe I got a drinking problem. And is there something I can do to get started on before I actually go to court? And he sent me to the West Yavapai Guidance Clinic. And what happened there is there was a room, I don't know, maybe a quarter the size of this room that I met this counselor in. And it wasn't, I worked in the Verde Valley also, worked for the Forest Service. My counseling was after work. Then I started pulling into the liquor store in Camp Verde and buying a 6-pack of beer and drinking it on the way to my counseling. And same thing, can of squirt, pack of certs, some gum. And I just never got close to the guy. I stayed about as far as I am from this wall right here, and he didn't smell me, and he eventually wrote the court a letter and told him I had completed the course. What they did to me, the judge sentenced me to 30 days in jail and suspended it, took my license away on a Friday and gave it back to me on Monday, and fined me like, I can't remember, $250, $500, something like that. And it was like a slap on the wrist, man. And I continued to drink and drive for a while. I just didn't get caught again. But, okay. Somewhere along the line, that was starting to where the alcohol wouldn't work. And then there were things like, all of a sudden I couldn't wake up at night to go pee, So I'm in my bed and I'm peeing in the bed. And, I'd wake up and my ex-wife would be on the couch. I go, what are you doing? She goes, well, you peed all over me. And another thing would happen to me. I'm so fucked up, I can't find the door to get out of my bedroom to go to the bathroom when I do wake up. And I gotta pee, terrible, So I'm just peeing on the wall. And, she wakes up while I'm doing that, and wasn't too fond of that either. You kind of wonder why that woman doesn't think a lot of me nowadays, but anyway. So I don't know how I got to AA. Okay, I can't tell you that so-and-so called me or somebody came and picked me up and gave me a ride there. I don't know. But I know, okay, that counselor, what that counselor told me to do at the West Yavapai Guidance Clinic when he wrote that letter to the court, he told me to drink 2 or 3 and stop. That's what he told me. And I thought, okay. So when I finally did go to AA, the men at AA would tell their stories, and their stories most of the time are much worse than mine. And those guys did not tell me to drink 2 or 3 and quit. They didn't do that. They invited me to an AA meeting that night. I went, and I quit drinking for 4 years. I just started using drugs every day. And I was in the bar, and I still love the bars, man. You know, you guys have whatever the hell they call it nowadays, your lots of fish or plenty of fish or, you know, we didn't have that, man. We had Whiskey Row in the bars, and if you had a pocket full of hundreds and a bag of cocaine, you were pretty popular down on Whiskey Row, you know, even if you weren't fishing, you know. And so what I found, okay, now, once again, the booze started doing all that weird ass shit to me, so I'm no longer Mr. Cool, you know. I mean, you're pissing on the wall and getting arrested, and but wow, cocaine made me where I could walk in the bar again. I could talk to the girls. I could shoot pool. Man, I could drive like a fucking maniac, and they'd pull me over, and I'm not drinking, man. You know, and I mean, I don't know how many. When I got sober, I mean, I didn't even have I had so many tickets for speeding and different violations, but I just never paid them. And but when, you know, and they didn't, they weren't able to run all that shit on you that they run on you now. But you know, I would sign the ticket and I'd be polite and I'd go on about my business. When cocaine quit working, and I never shot it. You know, I had a habit of, I don't know, 5 to 10 grams a day. If I did 5 grams a day, people that I knew thought I was clean that day, that I wasn't loaded. If I didn't have cocaine, I just couldn't function. You know, I've had lots of days where I'd use 15 grams of cocaine, and I was snorting all that. Okay, and I didn't put any of it on my gums. I was just snorting it, and my sinuses would get infected, and so this friend of mine told me, he goes, well, why don't you quit snorting it for a while and just smoke it? And I thought, well, that's a good idea. So I drove to the biggest head shop in Arizona. It was on Mill Avenue. God, I can't remember the name of it now. I didn't take my privilege in this morning, but you young people don't get that joke. But anyway, Happy Trails, that's right. It was Happy Trails back then. Anyway, I'm driving a dark blue turbocharged Audi. Windows are tinted out. You can't even see in them. I wear diamond and gold rings and gold chains and white Stetson hat and dark glasses, of course. And I walk in this store and I'm looking at it. And I told the girl, I said, I need everything. I said, I want to buy everything I need to make and smoke freebase cocaine. And she looks at me and she says, we don't sell anything like that. And I remember standing back, and I took my glasses and pulled them down, and I looked at all the pipes and the bongs and the cut and everything that place sells. And I looked back at her and I said, if you don't, just who the hell does? And she let me know it was the wrong terminology. I needed to ask for an oil pipe. And I left there that day with everything I needed to make and smoke freebase cocaine. And, you know, I'd have to snort cocaine for probably 2 days to get as crazy as I get smoking it in an hour or two. So when the cocaine quit working, I wasn't peeing in the bed. I wasn't in the bed that often. When the cocaine quit working, I started seeing people after me. And I mean, when I tell these stories, I can still see it. And, you know, these hallucinations were not like LSD. psilocybin, LSD, peyote, somewhere inside of you, that what you're seeing ain't right. You're gonna be okay in a while. This stuff was as real as me looking at you, and I did things like I was home. Some people had been at my house for 3 days. We were, smoking base, and they all left. I don't know anything about that crack shit. Okay, they didn't have that whenever you buy the best cocaine you can buy, and let's say, and then you turn it into base. If you have a gram of the best cocaine you can find, and you turn it into base, you got less than a gram. So why the crack is cheap, I don't know, but that's one of those things they came up with after 1986. But so I'm looking across the street, and I see these long-haired kids siphoning gas out of my neighbor's car. And I called the cops and told them. And then they came over into my yard. And I lived in a place with a 6-foot fence around it. And one of them was straddling the fence. Right now I can see this. One of them straddling the fence. One of them is outside of the fence. And one of them is inside. And they got my car jacked up in the air like a race car, from the side. So like 2 tires are up in the air at the same time. And they're taking my tires and wheels off my car and handing them to that guy up on straddling the fence, and he's handing them down, and they did the same thing with my bumper. And then I looked, and there's a girl sitting in the driver's seat, and she's got a gun. And so I called the police back, and I get my gun, and I tell the cops, I go, where the hell are you? I said, now they're in my yard. They're taking parts off of my car. And they got a gun, and I got one too, and somebody's going to get shot. Man, they were at my house, like, right then, And so I'm smart enough to leave the gun in the house, and I walk outside, and then I see my car, and there's nothing wrong with it. And I got 3 big German Shepherds, and they're just laying there, and then I go, oh, shit, Then... But I know they were siphoning gas out of my neighbor's car. So I walk out, and we walk across the street, and it was a dirt road, and it had rained, and the cops are looking for tracks, and there's none. And I remember that cop, he had a notepad, and he goes, what's your name? Date of birth? And he says, do you think somebody's after you? Those were the things I did. I would take a rifle and tie a flashlight on the end of it and walk around in my yard, pointing it at the bushes, and I'd throw a big rock in the bush. Okay. I did a lot of shit like that. Now we're going to jump forward, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what happened to me. I went back to AA, and I felt like, here I'm this local boy, and came from a good home. I had such promise, and now I've wound up at A&A, But what happened to me, nowadays you get a lot of flack from people about they don't want to hear about drugs in a AA meeting. Those guys didn't treat me that way. Those guys were, hey, man, we're glad you're here. And I was 33 years old when I got sober. And I was one of the youngest guys in the program here. Today, if you're 33 years old when you get sober, you're probably one of the older guys in the program. You might be as old as Kenny over there, or Marijuana Mike over here, but but I had a lot of trouble staying sober. because, I mean, in a few days I'm eating, I'm sleeping, and I feel better, and I get a 30-day chip, and it'd be Friday, and everybody's going to be out doing it tonight, and I know how to do it as well as any of them, and I need to be out there with them. And so that thinking, and I'd say, I'm only going to do a little bit. I'm going to do just enough to have a good time tonight, and I'll come back to the meeting tomorrow, and if I've got 48 days today, as far as you're concerned, tomorrow I'll have 49. But you know what happened, man. If I get high tonight, I got to get high tomorrow. And I got to keep getting high until I can no longer get any of it. And I did that for about 2 years. And I was at a meeting, and there was a little old woman in there, and she had 36 years sober. She was 82 years old. And, back to the house that I called the cops on myself at. I stood in that house one time and said, God help me. And I believe that I met that lady. I think that's an answer to that prayer. God help me. And honestly, guys, God's still helping me today. But I met that lady, and that lady invited me to her house. And she told me I'm welcome there anytime. She asked one thing of me. The next time I felt like getting loaded. Before I did it, she wanted me to come and talk to her first. And she said, when we're done talking, if you want to go, you can go. And you can still come back, and I'll still be your friend. And honestly, I don't know why I kept that commitment. But I went to her house, and it took 10 days for me to feel like getting high again. And on the way to her house, I thought, I'm not going to talk about the weather. I'm not going to talk about anything. I'm going to talk about the fact that I want to get high, and then I'm gone. That's the agreement. What happened? As long as I'm keeping that stuff inside, and I'm not talking to a sober alcoholic about it, it makes sense, and I act on it. Once I started talking to a sober alcoholic about my plan to go out and get fucked up again, it started not making sense. And we talked about what I thought it was going to do for me, and we talked about what it was really going to do for me. And the feeling went away. I didn't have to go get high that night. And I haven't had to get high since. That lady taught me things like, God as I understand him. Did not have to be God as my mother understood God. Did not have to be God as the Baptist understood him, or even as Patty understood him. It could be God as I understand him. And today, I don't even pretend to understand God, okay? And I'm not going to tell you, I don't even have a concept of what that is. What I have is a consciousness that power works. And, I'll jump ahead. I think, Jesus Christ, I'm not going to be able to talk for an hour. And, if LaVon over here had the timer, she'd cut me off. But my life today is so incredible. And that's because I get to come here. I was a general contractor. I won't go into all that. In 08, 09, 10, the market crashed, and man, I lost every damn thing I had. We lost our home. We lost my wife's car. We lost my truck. And you're 23 years sober. That shit's not supposed to happen. And I couldn't get a job. Lori got a job, but I couldn't get one. And oh man, the little Mark syndrome is big time right now, because I can't even buy used tires for our vehicle. Can't buy my kids shoes. I ask God to mold me into the man who would attract the job he had for me. And if I have time, I'm going to tell you how I learned to say that prayer. But what happened is I got a job, and I built big, nice, beautiful homes. I got a job for $10 an hour driving a van for a treatment center. Plus, it was a filthy, dented up old van to boot, And I remember being at a intersection and sitting way down because I didn't want anybody to see me driving that old fucking van, But what I learned, I got sober at a place where they said, "Hey, man, glad you're here." I'd use cocaine in the bathroom at meetings. They said, "Hey, man, glad you're here. Keep coming back." They never said, "You're a dumbass, get the fuck out of here." And when I'm working for treatment treats a lot of people, the ones I saw, my experience with them, like they're second-class citizens. And they're fine to kick your ass out because there's another one to come right behind you. And I thought, wow, this isn't how I got sober. So I came up with a vision. We didn't have any money. But I said to Lori, let's start a program. Let's create something so that when these guys get out of treatment, because they do 30 days, 60 days, and get high as soon as they left. I said, let's start a program where they can finish treatment and then come into our program. We'll help them get jobs. We'll have barbecues. We'll go to meetings. We'll have book studies. And we had no money. But just all that happened. A guy loaned us some money. Another guy had a fourplex. He didn't want to rent anymore. God was working, and it fell into place. And what we did is we treated these clients like human beings. We treated them like, "We're glad you're here, man. Keep coming back." And it fucking blossomed. I don't know how many clients we eventually had. We had a business called the Solution House, and we probably treated 2,000 clients. And the thing we did, nobody ever got turned away. Nobody. If you didn't have any money, you came anyway. If we didn't have a bed, we had a couch. And when we ran out of the couches, we had recliners. And once again, I got to watch God work through that. And other things that I got 2 boys. They're probably both of them are well over 6 feet tall. Lori assures me, and I'm probably gonna get in trouble for saying this. She assures me I'm the father. But neither one of those kids have ever seen us take a drink or a drug. And I have got the blessing of learning from my boys. My oldest one's like 3 or 4 years old. We're in Colorado fishing, and he can catch half of my limit, and my limit was 4. So he could catch 2. And he'd caught 3, and I'd caught 1, and I'm going, shit, and so I turned to him, and I didn't want to try and explain game warden. So I said, "Cooper, if the fish police come by, we need to tell them that I caught 3 and you caught 1, because otherwise we have to quit fishing." And right then we both caught another fish. So now we got our 6 fish, and we're going to clean them. But I told him once again, I said, if the fish police come, you caught 2 and I caught 4. And he goes, "Dad, is it okay to lie to the fish police?" And I wanted to go, "Yes, son. The fish police, the traffic cop, and the IRS. But you don't lie to your mom and me and your teacher." And I had to say, no, son, it's not okay to lie to the fish police. I said, if they come, we'll tell them I caught 2 and you caught 4. He goes, well, Dad, if we tell them we're from another state and we won't do it again, he goes, they'll probably let us go. But my kids have taught me so much, so much. My youngest son, my oldest son was born. Lori started having contractions about 1 in the morning. We went to the hospital. He's born at 7:30 in the morning. They put him on mom's chest, start teaching him how to breastfeed. We're home by 4:30 that afternoon. My other one was born. It was a whole different ball game. He was born on a stretcher in the emergency room. Had the cord wrapped around his neck, had a hole in his heart and a hole in his lung. He was born premature, blue. They didn't put him, they took him to ICU, and I don't know what they did with Lori. They took her away for a while. I mean, she could tell you when she talks, but I don't think it was real pleasant. But I mean, they didn't do anything bad to her. It's just the procedures that they had to do. But the doctors told me that it's going to get worse before it gets better. And my fear, man, I mean, I start thinking, well, and I'm 50 fucking years old when we have that kid, okay? But my thinking is, maybe we can have another kid. I don't want to get close to that kid because I don't want to get hurt. And I called AA, and there was a big roundup function going on, and 160 alcoholics, unbeknownst to me, started praying for my little boy. And he started getting better, and he started getting better, and he started getting better. He's going to tell me that's the timer, I guess. Anyway. So then they had to airlift him to a neonatal intensive care. And man, they came in, this crew of people, and this huge thing. They had this little boy in, and I'm staying away because I don't want to be hurt. And a thought came to me, man, I'm his daddy. I got to go in there. And I still remember this. I went in there, and I put my finger in where that little boy was, and he squeezed my finger. And, wow. Like I said, he's 6 foot something today. He's 18 years old. 23 years sober, lost my ass. Couldn't get a job. My friend Marijuana Mike, I'd go get a bag of donuts and a couple of cups of coffee and go over to Mike's office every fucking day. And I'm so glad that Mike was my friend. We name him Marijuana Mike because Mike's been in the program as long as me, but he saw fit to maybe drink a beer on the way to the meeting and maybe drink 2 of them after the meeting. Smoke quite a bit of pot. And yeah. I'm talking to you about asking God to, okay, I'm going to try and get this up. I got to quit at 8, is that right? Okay, I'm going with a girl, and she dumps me and goes back to her old boyfriend, gets pregnant, has a baby. Oh, my God, little Mark, how's he going to handle this? The only way I can handle it is I got to have her back. So I'm praying, God, put the right woman in my life. And God, I can give you her address and her phone number. Help you out a little bit, And I told that to a guy that had 33 years sober, and he looked at me and he goes, do you think God's a pimp? And he said, why don't you try praying for God to mold you into the man who will attract the right woman? Because the only work I can do is in here, man. I can't work on you. And, what the hell? I tried it. And I prayed that prayer for, I don't know, a couple, 2 or 3 years. I didn't meet the right woman right away, but I changed how I treated women. I stopped using women for my own ego and gratification and satisfaction. And I started treating them like people. And I became friends with Lori. And we were friends for a year before we ever got involved. So, what happened by me praying, God, mold me into the man who can do whatever it is you've got for me to do, played out again. I got to marry my best friend. If I pay attention, I full well believe as long as I'm still here, there's still things for me to learn and there's still work for me to do. I don't ever graduate. I go to meetings because that's where my medicine is. I've been to bazillions of meetings. I've never been to a meeting where I didn't leave feeling better than when I came in. And that does not mean I felt bad when I went in there. I could feel on top of the world when I go in there, but I feel better when I leave. I believe, I heard a speaker say this one time. I'm going to end with this. He's looking at his watch. I think your clock's fucked up. But, I heard a speaker one time say this. Okay, Patty taught me that there's the talk you want to give, the talk you planned on giving, and then the one you gave, okay? And I heard a speaker one time say this. He goes, God sent me here tonight to deliver a message to one of you. And I hope you heard it. Thanks.
Let's give Mark another round of applause.